Oh, it's too cold. Too cold. Can't do it. Anyway, what's up, YouTube? This is a video about something I had mentioned a while ago with a short that didn't really come out as well as I thought it was going to, but whatever. I uploaded it anyway. About zoom exposure. So, what exactly is zoom exposure? Well, on one hand, it's taking something very mundane and sprucing it up to actually be an interesting photo. For example, I'm going to shoot this tree right behind me. Pretty boring, nothing special, but we're going to make it special. And my settings basically are 1/4 of a second, f11, ISO 100, with the flash at maximum power. I'm sure you can see that. There we are, 1:1, max power, and the settings. There you go. And so basically, what you do is once the flash fires, you slightly zoom. That's it. That's all you got to do. And the results are very interesting. It'll take some, going back and forth because you have to get the flash exposure to be higher than the ambient lighting that you're working with, which is why I have the flash at full power. So let's take a shot and see what happens. And yeah, the actual technique makes for some very, very interesting visualizations. So I'll just take a couple more shots of some stuff around here, and then I'll throw these up on the screen, and you'll see exactly what I mean. So here we have a preliminary image that we will use as a reference. Now, there was a very, very, very slight amount of flash that I used on here because I wanted to illustrate what happens when you try to use this technique and you're not providing enough flash lighting. There's not enough difference between the lighting from the flash to freeze the subject while you zoom. And the one thing to keep in mind is while you're using this technique, you've got to try to keep the camera as centered as possible throughout the zoom range that you're going to be using. You don't have to zoom all the way out. You just need to use a little bit of zoom just to create that zoom blur effect. Now, with that said, this is obviously just a blurry image. It looks boring, and further away it's not as blurred. It's just kind of meh at this point. Now let's do a side by side. So on the right side will be the reference image, and on the left side will be the images that I shot. So let's go back one here. Okay, so this image, as you can see, has a very interesting effect here. So I was able to freeze the tree and use the zoom effect for the background area, right? Let's just go in here and I will zoom in 100% to show that is how sharp the actual tree is. And you can see the blur effect. And don't mind my dog whining and whining. My wife's not home, so the dog's like, I want her back. Yeah, so anyway, you can see the zoom, but you can also see the separation of the subject as it was lit by the flash. So, it's a sharp image. It is a sharp image all the way across, and you can again see the zoom blur effect, but you can still see that separation. And this happens all the way across. You can see the light fields coming in there. Almost looks like hail or like meteors shining. So that is it's pretty much what you get. Let's skip over this one. And I decided I would try to shoot my car because I wanted to show in different lighting situations the limitations basically. So my car is very white. So, but this whole area completely illuminated. So it's got more of a ghosting effect, but it's not really blurred out, right? Let's just zoom in. And the center grille of the car is sharp. License plate is easily read. And the rest of it just kind of turned into a ghostly type of image. See detail on the headlight there. detail on the headlight there. And well, now that we already have this referenced image, hopefully you get how this works. So let's just close that and bring this full screen. And now if we zoom in to the sides here, you can see that, relatively speaking, I mean, this is sharp. It's just blown out, sort of a ghosting effect, a combination of the power from the flash and the zoom effect at the same time, but there is separation. And you can see a bit of the zoom blur along here, but you can make out the details, right? So it gives the images a completely different look when you actually use this technique for your shooting. And then I zoomed in a bit further to see what would happen if I zoomed the opposite way. As you can see, it's zooming away. So just kind of widen the car. But again, you've got to try to keep the camera as centered as possible. You don't want it swaying side to side when you're doing this technique. And here's another shot of the tree. And again, you can see detail all along here. However, you can see I wasn't exactly stable. I kind of waved the camera a tad bit, which you can see does actually distort some sections compared to the other shot that I had done. Let's just see if we can quickly do this here. Let's see. Pull that one up. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so you can see the difference. I mean, this is, just much straighter. This was a wider angle, which gives that crazy effect all along here. But the difference in the blur is what's interesting. So with a wider angle, oh, now I got to go back through. There we go. Now with a wider angle, when it comes to the background, you can get an extreme amount of blur. Like everything is like super zoom speed blurred. It really pulls everything all the way across the frame. And the only thing that will prevent that from wrecking the full image is the flash illuminated on the center of the subject in front of you. So, it's been a while since I've used the technique. I'll admit I was a tad bit rusty, but it does give you a good idea as to the kind of look you can get, and depending on how close you shoot and where the subject actually lands in the frame, you can get totally different effects, like the zoom blur here. It's almost like you're on a train, right? Versus how this is kind of wrapping around the tree. It's trying to wrap around. It kind of bends at the end here, but you totally can't make any of this out. But the tree itself is still fairly sharp, right? And there's good separation of the subject. And that was my phone. I'm not sure. Oh, I think that was an email. No, the edges are a little blurred on the tree as well. But then when you get close to the center, so this is why the subject should be as much to the center as possible when you're doing this, in order to avoid issues like this side of the tree here. It's a fun technique to actually use. You can get some really interesting effects. Like this one, it's almost like the tree's kind of eroding all over the place. Like the tree just looks weird. But I didn't, this shot, the camera, I kind of twisted the camera as I was zooming a tad bit, and I think, I did move it a little bit, you can see here. So I did shake it up and down very, very slightly as I was zooming. But the tree itself still comes out as the subject. You can clearly see that it's a tree. And this is interesting how this is just completely gone from all the light leaking through during the zoom blur, or during the zooming as I was taking the exposure. And this one here, see right at the edge there, still looks pretty good. And you've got all that blur in the background. Yeah, so it is a fun technique, and again, just similar to the other one, where this section here was on this side. This is, these are the kind of things you can actually create, right? This almost looks like a wall panel, but it's just like it was the houses that were on this side and the vehicle that was in the driveway. This is what it turns into when you do the zoom blur with an object that's very close to that side, right? And this was the remainder of the vehicle here. So here's the vehicle, and this was, I think this was the hockey net actually, this red section here. So it's very, very interesting how you can create a totally different look. And yeah, so I tried to go from zooming right in to zooming out to do this one, which came out kind of weird. And it's a fun technique just to experiment with, just play around with. You never know how it's going to actually come out. And for the most part, I mean, the settings, I was shooting at 0.3 of a second. So I think it was 1/4 of a second ish. Usually my absolute slowest I will go is 1/8 of a second. And ISO 100, f11, because I wanted to get this down to ISO 100. And you can see the individual leaves in here from this shrub. But then there's like a crazy amount of blur after the fact. So yeah, I mean, this is pretty much what the zoom blur, as I call it, technique. It's pretty much how it works. It's not that difficult to do. And the really nice thing is you could actually, in essence, do this with your camera's built-in flash if you have a built-in flash on your camera. Now, here's an example of needing to have the difference in lighting. So the flash lit this whole area. So this completely did nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was, once the flash went, that was it, right? There was nothing else to do. Did not work at all. Just too much for the flash to grab a hold of, right? Because it was the entire frame. So you need to have something that the flash can separate from the general environment in order for this to work. And this one here is what happens when it goes wrong. I was way too shaky. Way, way, way too shaky when I took this shot. But there's still detail along here, right? But still, it's still a fun technique just to mess around with, and it may at first seem like it didn't come out, but then when you get it on the computer, you may actually notice that, hey, wait, yeah, those actually are sharp. This is almost like, the tree's taking off or something. Kind of like, rocket-powered tree. Off to outer space, to infinity and beyond. And if you look at the roof area, you can see how it pulled all the underside around the eaves trough and everything all along here, just kind of pulled it all into one section. This is not supposed to be there. So yeah, I mean, it completely changes the look of what you are actually shooting. And here it actually extended the tree just on this side here. So that's pretty much all there really is to it. And then I shot the brick here, but I just couldn't get that difference in the ambient lighting to be enough to have this nice and sharp. So it's more of a ghost kind of image. And you can see the brick expanded as I zoomed. But, it's still sort of an abstract kind of feel, Work with me, guys, work with me. This one I think this is one that did not come out. Yeah, I think I overdid the zoom on that one. And that is something you'll run into. It is a lot of trial and error, but that's pretty much all there is to it.
So there you have it. How to spruce up your boring looking photos to make them look totally different and a lot more exciting and interesting in regards to catching the viewer's eye. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you like the video, leave a like. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. Helps me out. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. If you want to support the channel, that information's at the bottom of the description as well. Oh, what's that guy doing? Hey man, what are you doing? No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, that's it. I'm gonna go. You'll see me on my next video. I'm out.